Now, another thing that should be maybe pointed out is one very cool feature about this is it does have a switch in the back that basically cuts the power section in half, and it's very useful, especially in the studio. And here, I'll show you. Let me find it in the back here. And once the switch is cut in half, what's really nice about that is it still gives me the same tone. I still get the same type of gain. But as you can see, the volume's been cut tremendously down. It's really good, especially if you want to, if you approach the guitar a lot of times the way I do, where I kind of try and keep the preamp section as low as possible. And I try and open up the power section. That's how I can kind of get the most. So the reason why that guitar sounds as big and as fat as it does is because it's really not a preamp thing. It's really a power section thing. So it's a very important feature, especially friendly in the studio. So, and what I like about it is you don't change the fundamental tone. It's really the same sound, just kind of knocked down. Now, so I'm going to put it back up because, if we can turn it up, there's no shame in doing that either. So one other thing I think that's pretty nice about using amps that aren't totally drenched in gain on the front end is that they do very good for cleaning up, meaning if you want to play clean. So I can basically so they clean up really well. And a very cool thing that I think a lot of players tend to lean towards with their amps is reverb, and this is, I think, one of the only models that actually features reverb, or definitely one of the only companies that has the real old school kind of long reverb tanks. And so what's nice about that is you get all that. You can go. They still have not quite invented a plugin that sounds exactly like that. So a lot of players, are really big on that, especially for like a lot of the surf stuff, or just in general. So it's just another thing that I think works, really, really well. And like I said, you can always bring out the feature of the extra added boost for the front end if you want to drive it a little harder. But the reality is it's incredibly versatile, and I think it is that way because it's just dedicated to do very specific things. And personally, I like it. I like the fact that the EQ section is as straightforward as it is, because basically there's really no wrong sounds. If I have if I use single coils, it allows me to kind of really fatten up using the bass. If I'm using humbuckers, I tend to kind of lean more in the mids and lay off the highs. So I really feel it's a regardless of what I bring, if I'm doing a session, whether I'm bringing a single coil or humbucker, whatever brand of guitar, it really doesn't seem to matter, because in essence it seems to wash it all with that really particular sound, which I liked. And I mean, I just know for me that, I originally got hip to HIWATT years ago on a lot of their vintage stuff. I mean, I just obviously was a fan of a lot of the classic recordings, and I particularly liked HIWATT because I felt it was one of the few amps that really kind of excelled in that British thing, which was that really nice bump in the mid-range. So for me, it always kind of came across, whether I was, playing live, I always cut through the mix, whether I was mixing, especially in the studio, because I think that's where you can really look at things and decide what's going to work or not work. So for me, just having the real friendly mid-range and just that warm, pleasant, kind of that soft crunch, it's almost like having a natural compressor on it, and just always brought out the even harmonics, always kind of shied away from the odd ones, which was good. And it kept a tight low end, but yet would give me enough gain to do solos. So it was all these things that kind of eventually started, leading me towards HIWATT. And so, like everyone else, I was hip to a lot of the vintage gear. And then once I started realizing a lot of new, bands like Jet and other bands that I was, thought did an amazing job, I would hear the record and be like, that's great. I'd hear them, and they kind of piqued my interest. And then I started kind of, inquiring more about the newer stuff. And I was pleasantly surprised with all of it, to be honest with you. I didn't really feel there was a bad, at least out of the ones I've tried, I didn't feel there was a bad one on the line. So that was, in short, how I ended up making my way over to you know, trying these amplifiers. So there you have. Well, hopefully they will work well for you as well. So there you have it.